The story begins in a quiet town, inside a small house where a girl walks in, announcing that she's home. Her mother greets her warmly from the kitchen, while her grandmother eyes her suspiciously and questions the mother about where she thinks the girl has been. Grandma's basically running an in-house investigation unit at this point. The grandmother's convinced she was probably out on a date. Hearing this, the girl's mother insists that it can't be true because she doesn't believe her daughter shows any interest in boys. Meanwhile, the girl sits in her room, pulling out a magazine, an advice book by a dating guru, a celebrity named Miko, all about love. As soon as she starts reading the magazine, the girl feels a wave of happiness. She never thought she'd ever buy something like this in her life. But now, believing she's in love, she thinks to herself that she'll have to learn all of it. The next day at school, all the students are busy with their own things, while our girl sits beside a boy, feeling nervous. The boy calls her name, Nobukuni, trying to start a conversation. He's clearly unaware he's about to become part of a romantic experiment. After a brief pause, she quietly responds that she doesn't mind sharing a book with him. After that, she falls silent, thinking to herself that she hopes the books never arrive. A quiet joy fills her heart, but then a sudden spark of excitement runs through her. She realizes being happy isn't enough. She needs to follow Miko's advice. So she secretly slips the magazine out of her bag and starts reading it quietly. The magazine claims that to attract your crush, you should use the feminine pheromones released from your armpits. Reading this, she's a little shocked, but blushes softly as she slowly moves her arm. Pretending her shoulder feels heavy, she raises it slightly and, in the motion, bumps her elbow against the boy, leaving him startled. The boy turns and apologizes, but she quickly insists that she's the one who should be sorry. She keeps apologizing over and over until it suddenly hits her that she was just following the love advice, apologizing for existing. Classic student behavior. Confused, she wonders what she's supposed to do now. Blushing, she decides to try again, and this time, the boy begins to notice her movements. He now realizes that Nobukuni is clearly showing her underarms to him, blushing deeply as she does it. She's trying her absolute best to follow the advice she read in the magazine, determined to do it just right, but all this only confuses the boy even more, and he turns his face away. Seeing that, Nobukuni freezes, wondering why he looked away. Did she do something wrong? Spoiler, yes, but not in the way she thinks. Nervousness floods her so much that her face turns red, and then she catches a whiff of a smell, making her think in panic why it suddenly stinks so much. At that moment, Nobukuni remembers how her mother had told her last night to keep the windows open because there was a strong smell in her room. She'd argued that the smell wasn't coming from her. Denial level, professional athlete. Now, sitting in class, she thinks about it again, realizing she's a pretty sweaty person, but that doesn't mean she should smell bad. Lost deep in thought, she doesn't notice that her crush is watching her. Embarrassed, Nobukuni places both hands behind her head, hoping her crush, Sasaki, doesn't get the wrong idea. Just then, he reminds her that class is still going on and asks if she's okay. Translation: please stop before this becomes a scene. She nods quickly, replying yes, but he quietly points out that by raising her arms like that, her inner clothes are showing. It's not really something she should be doing in front of the boys. Nobukuni immediately starts apologizing, worried that she might smell bad, while Sasaki calmly reassures her that he didn't smell anything at all. He just didn't want anyone to see her inner clothes. Nobukuni nods and promises to be careful next time, explaining that she doesn't want her body showing to anyone since there's nothing special about it anyway. Sasaki stops her, saying he's not sure. That's true. Hearing that, Nobukuni blushes even harder. She blushes so much that her entire face turns red, and she has no idea what to do. At this point, she could power a small city with the heat from her face. When class finally ends and she returns home, Nobukuni hugs her teddy bear tightly and starts thinking about the love advice from her guru. She talks to the teddy bear, the one she won at an event named after her love guru. She calls it Miko. Worried and thoughtful, Nobukuni decides she should follow her guru Miko's advice every week. Placing all her trust in Miko, she quietly hopes her guru will never betray her. The next day in the classroom, while all the students are busy with their studies, Nobukuni rests her head on the desk. When Sasaki looks at her, he realizes she's fallen asleep, her cheeks still faintly glowing with a soft blush. Sasaki leans close to her ear and calls her name softly, making Nobukuni jolt awake. She explains she couldn't sleep last night because she woke up in the middle of it, so now she's still drowsy. Her eyelids droop as she lets her head sink back onto the desk. Watching her, Sasaki murmurs that she's fallen asleep again, but admits she looks pretty cute while doing it. but Nobukuni seems to hear it too, surprising her deep inside. As he moves closer to wake her again, she suddenly turns toward him. Her reflexes finally decide to show up, just at the wrong time. He asks if she wasn't actually asleep, and in that moment, Nobukuni hides her face, completely unsure of what to do. Lying on her desk, Nobukuni thinks it's time to try another piece of advice from her guru, Miko, the one that says boys can't resist a sleeping girl's face. She'd read in the magazine that showing a valuable expression could capture a boy's attention. Apparently, pretending to nap is now a dating strategy, so, still resting her head on the desk, she tries to turn towards Sasaki, but the desk makes it hard for her to move properly. Her little act falls apart when a button on her shirt snaps open, making her inner clothes visible. The sudden slip leaves Nobukuni startled and frozen in surprise. Then she thinks to herself that maybe this could be an opportunity for Sasaki to focus on her more. Still, the moment feels terribly embarrassing. Glancing nervously around the classroom, Nobukuni realizes she's actually showing herself as defenseless. Just like her guru Miko's advice suggested, her dignity, however, has already filed for leave. Yet deep down, she doubts Sasaki even noticed her fake sleep in the first place. On the other side, Sasaki keeps his eyes averted, his mind filled with one uneasy question. Why is all this happening? He's been watching Nobukuni for a while, though he's sure she hasn't noticed. Still, he can't stop thinking about how to wake her up, especially now. Now Sasaki wonders if Nobukuni really likes him. Ever since she started sitting next to him, he's found himself watching her more and more. Lost in thought, he decides that if it's true, maybe he should be the one to take the first step and confess to her. A brave thought, considering he's barely surviving eye contact. But then he notices a few boys in the class whispering and laughing while looking at Nobukuni, and anger suddenly rises inside him. He takes off his coat and gently places it over Nobukuni. She stirs a little, showing some resistance and trying to move, but Sasaki keeps adjusting it carefully so her body won't be revealed. What he doesn't know is that Nobukuni isn't really asleep. She's just pretending the whole time. In the end, Sasaki manages to place the coat over her, forcing it gently into place while thinking to himself that it was a pretty close call. Meanwhile, the blush on Nobukuni's face deepens, and Sasaki's heartbeat quickens. A yawn escapes him, as if he's starting to feel sleepy too, and when he glances at Nobukuni, she's still doing her best to make him believe she's fast asleep. During that moment, Sasaki starts wondering if Nobukuni is really asleep or just trying to attract him. He can't tell what's true anymore. Then, as the class bell rings, she suddenly jolts awake, realizing she had actually been resting against Sasaki's shoulder. Her acting skills may be questionable, but her timing is flawless. Flustered, she apologizes quickly, but Sasaki smiles and assures her it's no problem. Nobukuni starts blushing hard, holding Sasaki's coat in her hands, feeling nervous just talking to him. She can't help thinking how much she likes not only his face, but also his eyes. In the middle of their small talk, she shyly tells him she'll return the coat after washing it. But Sasaki smiles and remarks that she doesn't need to think that far ahead. Then Nobukuni suddenly asks Sasaki a strange question, whether he noticed anything unusual about her while she was asleep, and if he did, how it made him feel. Subtlety has clearly left the building. The moment she says it, Sasaki falls completely silent, at a loss for words, and quickly deflects, saying there was nothing like that. Panic rushes through Nobukuni as she wonders if he's disappointed in her, but he denies it as he's freaking inside. The following morning at school, the classroom buzzes with chatter as the students talk among themselves. Sasaki walks over to Nobukuni and greets her with a cheerful good morning, and she replies softly, her brains already sprinting ahead of reality. As he sits beside her, his eyes linger for a moment on her hair, quietly admiring it. Nobukuni asks Sasaki what he was saying about her hair, explaining that she overslept and didn't have time to fix it that morning. The two of them start chatting about their morning routines, and in the middle of it, Sasaki compliments her, saying it's cute. Hearing that, she suddenly falls silent. A quiet stillness settles between them as the blush on Nobukuni's face deepens, her heart secretly glowing with happiness. Dignity just left the chat, but then she catches herself almost smiling too much and stops, not wanting to make that same silly face again. In her mind, she wonders if Miko's words were true, the question about whether boys really struggle to call girls cute. Nobukuni recalls Miko's advice from the night before, that boys call girls cute to make them happy, and it feels even better when it's from someone they like. Glancing at Sasaki, she also remembers another line. Sometimes boys say it just to get a girl's attention. In her mind, Nobukuni thinks that Sasaki probably said cute as a safe word. She starts wondering if he might actually like her. She's overthinking like it's an Olympic sport. Then, over the next few moments, she recalls that she hasn't seen Sasaki with any other girl, which makes her think he only connects with girls he truly likes. Though she isn't entirely sure about her feelings yet, she's happy he called her cute. Curiously, she tells him that her home is in the countryside, really just wanting to know where he lives, imagining he might live in some cave. Then Sasaki says her name, and Nobukuni panics slightly, turning to him and asking if he knows anything about caves. He replies no, and she thinks to herself that it doesn't make sense. If he didn't, then why did he call her cute? Meanwhile, her mind keeps replaying every moment when Sasaki called her cute. She thinks to herself that she'll have to reflect on it later, because Sasaki really is quite cute too. But she can't figure out why he said it in the first place. Her brain refuses to chill. Just then, her friend Ima nearby notices her and asks if she has a bug in her stomach. Nobukuni apologizes, but Ima asks her to explain what's really going on instead of saying sorry. Nobukuni tells her that she's no longer hungry. Ima is surprised, knowing that Nobukuni is usually always hungry, but she denies it. Meanwhile, she starts listening to the conversations of the other classmates around them. The boys are talking among themselves, and one of them says that no one's face is as handsome as Sasaki's. The conversation quickly turns into an argument, and one boy steps in first, telling them to change the topic. Ima and Nobukuni watch them, with Ima muttering that the boys are really idiots. Finally, something they both agree on. After lunch, Nobukuni's mind is still caught up thinking about the time Sasaki called her cute. Suddenly, a smile starts creeping onto her face, but she quickly stops herself, not wanting to make such a silly expression. She begins wondering again why Sasaki called her cute, and the thought makes her blush all over once more. She starts to smile again, but immediately covers her face with both hands to stop herself. Seeing her do this, Sasaki calls out, asking what's wrong. She tells him she's fine, and then mumbles to Sasaki if, when he called her cute, he actually meant that she looks plain, like a potato. She adds that if that's really what he meant, why didn't he just say it straight out? Potatoes everywhere, just felt offended. Sasaki, with confidence, reassures her that everything he said was true. Hearing that, Nobukuni's face turns bright red, blushing like a ripe tomato. She hadn't expected it at all. The next morning, as Nobukuni tries on different hairbands, her mother tells her to hurry up or she'll be late. Holding a hairband in place, she thinks to herself that just because a boy complimented her, it doesn't mean they're friends now. She'll need to attract Sasaki even more to really grab his attention. When she goes to school, Sasaki looks at her and greets her. She replies, and then Sasaki, noticing the new hairband on her head, tells her it looks really cute on her. Her heart skips, professionalism gone. Hearing that, our girl becomes happy again. The next day in class, while everyone is busy with their own work, Nobukuni circles Sasaki's seat, trying to get closer to him. He notices but has no idea why she's doing it. He glances at her from the corner of his eye, but she starts whistling and looks away. She's basically doing stealth missions with zero stealth. When she sees Sasaki focused on his work again, she moves closer and leans near his ear to catch his scent. Just then, a classmate spots her and walks over to ask for English notes. Nobukuni panics, and when the girl questions what she's doing, she insists it's nothing. The girl, suspicious, raises an eyebrow and asks if she was trying to smell Sasaki's ear. Flustered, Nobukuni pleads with her not to tell him anything and blurts out that she did it because of a Love Guru magazine she read. It told her to try things like this. She explains that she's simply following the advice from those love columns, no matter how odd they sound. Romance advice from magazines, ruining lives since forever. The girl stares at her in disbelief, asking if she seriously reads that stuff. When Nobukuni's classmates overhear, her words sound suspicious to them. Nobukuni realizes they probably think Miko-sama is some weirdo, so she quickly clarifies that Miko is the person who wrote the magazine, the so-called Love Guru, but from their reactions, it's obvious they all find this bizarre. They admit they always thought Nobukuni was the quiet type who just read books and had no interest in romance or boys, but what they're seeing now is completely different. The teasing begins, and Nobukuni blushes as she stammers that she just wants to change herself. Then Airi-chan comes right out with it. Does she really like Sasaki? And just like that, the rumor mill clocks in early. Instead of answering, Nobukuni's face flushes bright red. The girls around her can't help but find her adorable. One even thinks to herself that Nobukuni kind of looks like her dog. Mortified, Nobukuni makes an excuse to leave. When they ask where she's going, she says she's off to sniff the back of Sasaki's ear, because lunch break is almost over and she needs to get it done quickly. Her classmate stops her, saying she can't just go around sniffing people without permission. It's way too creepy. Nobukuni protests that she has no other choice and can't just ask him outright. Eri sighs and decides to go ask in Nobukuni's place instead. Before she can react, the girl strides straight towards Sasaki and calls out to him. This is what happens when you outsource bad ideas. She walks up to him and declares that she's found a way to test a boy's compatibility. With him, apparently. Sasaki asks why him, but she dodges the question. Watching from her seat, Nobukuni thinks this is exactly what she'd expect from a gyaru like her. Eri leans closer to Sasaki's ear, warning him not to move, or their faces might bump. From across the room, Nobukuni watches the entire scene unfold, jealousy quietly bubbling up inside her as her classmate sniffs behind Sasaki's ear. He freezes in shock, and Nobukuni's intense stare makes the moment even more awkward. Finally, Sasaki urges Fujisan to stop, and somewhere in the distance, secondhand embarrassment dies a little. When she presses him, Sasaki admits the whole thing is embarrassing. The girl urges Nobukuni to say something, but Nobukuni tells her to stop, realizing Sasaki clearly isn't enjoying this, and she'd thought it was a bad idea from the start. Eri snaps, accusing Nobukuni of betraying her and making her look like a weirdo for doing it alone. Nobukuni fires back, saying people who read those kinds of love columns aren't popular anyway. Later, fuming with her friends, Eri complains that trying to help Nobukuni only backfired, while another classmate quietly watches Sasaki from afar. That girl remarks to Eri that she knows she's Nobukuni's childhood friend, but instead of helping, maybe they should just watch from afar to see what those two are actually doing. When they look over, they notice her struggling to get closer to Sasaki, but somehow she's finding it really hard to do so. At this point, even gravity's against her. At night, Nobukuni sits at home, flipping through a magazine that lists 10 tips on how to get popular using Line. Because nothing screams productivity like late-night romance research. She spends the entire night absorbed in the book, and the next day, she shares everything she learned with Eri. But now, Eri points out what she believes is the real problem. Nobukuni has no contact with Sasaki at all. She agrees and asks if it's normal to talk online with someone you like. Eri nods and says it's perfectly fine. Nobukuni admits she got the tips from the magazine, but complains that it didn't say anything about how to get the contact of her favorite person. The magazine clearly skipped the hardest part. After a short argument, she starts crying, and hearing the noise, Eri hushes her, saying she finally understands why Nobukuni came to her in the first place. She gently tells her to stop crying. A moment later, Eri stands up, saying she'll be back in a while, but Nobukuni grabs her hand and demands to know where she's going. Panic speed runs faster than logic here. Eri replies that she's going to get Sasaki's Line ID for her. Nobukuni warns her not to go too far, worried that he might fall for her instead, since Eri is so beautiful. After that, Eri turns to her, gently squishing Nobukuni's cheeks and telling her she's much cuter than she realizes. Nobukuni protests, asking her to let go, but Eri presses further, wanting to know what she really wants. This is friendship mixed with mild torture. She admits she just wants to learn how to ask someone for their ID. Eri advises that the more she overthinks it, the harder it will become. Then, she rests her hand on Nobukuni's shoulder and starts helping her practice how she'd ask Sasaki for his ID. But as Eri guides her through it, Nobukuni blushes even harder. Confidence level, buffering. Finally, Eri tells her to go for it and give her best, sending her off to class. As soon as she approaches Sasaki and starts talking to him, she panics and raises her voice with every sentence. From behind, Eri calls out and asks why she keeps shouting at the end of every line. Nobukuni snaps back, telling her to be quiet. She just needs to calm down a little. Eri doesn't take it well. She feels like Nobukuni is mocking her. Drama level, classroom soap opera. Meanwhile, Nobukuni sits there, worried that she could never talk to a boy with the same confidence Eri has. So, she suggests that if Nobukuni can't ask for the ID directly, they'll have to make him give it to her willingly. Nobukuni can't imagine how that could even happen. Eri then pulls the gal to the corner of the classroom and starts talking loudly about how happy she is that Nobukuni gave her Line ID, clearly hoping Sasaki will overhear. And he does. But Nobukuni's acting is terrible. Oscar-worthy? Not even close. Eri continues, saying she's thrilled because every morning Nobukuni tells her the color of her panties online. Hearing that, Nobukuni's face turns bright red while Sasaki awkwardly stays quiet. She pleads with Eri not to say such things, but Eri insists she should just leave it all to her. Nobukuni says she thinks it might work, but Eri tells her to wait a little longer. After some time passes and Sasaki still doesn't come, Eri tells her to go and tell him the color of her panties herself. Nobukuni refuses, but Eri insists that if she does, Sasaki will definitely come to her. The only problem now is that Nobukuni can't remember the color. Memory loss at the worst possible moment. So Eri tells her to go to the corner of the classroom and check to be sure. She does just that. She walks over shyly, asks if Eri is making noise, and then checks the color, blushing furiously. Meanwhile, everyone else in class remains busy with their own things. While Nobukuni focuses on her little mission, Eri quietly walks up to Sasaki and asks if he finds Nodoka cute. Surprised, he listens as Eri explains that when Nobukuni comes to him, he should give her his line ID. Operation Get the Guy is now in stealth mode. She winks, says thanks, and adds that Nobukuni must never find out it was her idea. That night at home, Nobukuni thinks about following another piece of advice from the magazine, which says she should have an extra session with her favorite person, because clearly, emotional chaos needs scheduled sessions too. She really wants to try it, but wonders what she could even do. After all, the only thing she's special at is origami. So, in class, Nobukuni and Sasaki are assigned duty after school. Once everyone leaves, she keeps glancing toward him, making strange faces and smiling, her cheeks flushed with color. Stealth level 0. Sasaki notices and thinks she seems like she's planning something today. He's a little surprised, wondering what Nobukuni actually wants. Maybe she likes him but doesn't know how to show it. Thinking that, he decides he should do something nice for her instead. Watching her quietly, he makes up his mind that he'll handle everything himself today. When Nobukuni tries to leave, Sasaki casually remarks that she might have wanted to go to the toilet. Truly, the smoothest line in romantic history. Hearing that, she freezes in shock. Sasaki asks if she doesn't want to go, and she quickly blurts out that she doesn't, then demands to know why he even thought that. He apologizes, realizing he might have said something rude without meaning to, and tells himself that next time he'll wait to figure out what she really wants before speaking. Just then, Nobukuni's stomach rumbles. Mortified, she apologizes, insisting it's not because she's hungry, it was just a random sound. Her stomach apparently didn't get the memo. Sasaki smiles and says he has a piece of bread he bought from the canteen, offering it to her. Nobukuni refuses at first but then shyly accepts it. Still, she sets the bread aside, saying she'll eat it later. Then, noticing Sasaki filling out the class comments, she offers to help by doing something else and starts cleaning the blackboard. Nothing says romance like chalk dust. Sasaki smiles to himself as he writes, realizing that's usually his task, one she's taken over this time. He watches her move, her body soft and slightly trembling, and can't help but notice she can't reach the top corner of the board. It dawns on him that she's deliberately doing something that'll make their after-class duty last a little longer. Thinking that, he realizes Nobukuni wants to do something before leaving school, but he can't quite figure out what. The man's solving emotional riddles instead of equations. While wiping the board, Nobukuni suddenly asks if he knows about cranes. Sasaki pauses, confused, wondering if that's supposed to be a hint. Then she clarifies she means paper cranes, and suddenly it clicks. She's dropping him a big clue. Sasaki mulls it over, watching her red-tipped ears, realizing it must mean something important. Still unsure, he quietly walks over to help her clean. As they work side by side, he asks if she's free this weekend, and if she'd like to go sightseeing with him. At once, Nobukuni's face turns bright red, and she asks why he chose her. Sasaki hesitates, worried she's upset, but she quickly assures him she's not. Heart rate rising, logic leaving the chat. Relieved, he smiles and admits he thought she might invite him on a date before heading home. Nobukuni immediately denies it, flustered, and starts to explain what she actually meant, but Sasaki interrupts, saying he wants to guess it himself. He tries to piece it together, word by word, until Nobukuni finally confesses that she was talking about origami. Sasaki realizes he'd almost guessed right and now understands what she truly meant. In the middle of their conversation, Nobukuni apologizes, but Sasaki tells her there's no need and insists they should finish their weekly duty. He offers to handle the rest himself, saying jumping might be dangerous for her. His gentle attitude makes Nobukuni blush all over again. Deep down, she really loves that about him. At this point, her blush deserves its own attendance record. Then they start talking about how good she is at making origami. She can even fold a dragon, which Sasaki finds impressive. And just like that, she manages to convince him to stay a little longer and make origami with her. As always, our girl recalls a new piece of advice from her love guru, how to make the ham pose to get popular with boys. She learned that by holding her lower lip gently between her teeth, she can make an expression that makes the other person feel like they want to protect her. Because that's totally how attraction works, right? Nobukuni starts practicing it right there in class. But when Sasaki looks at her, he has no idea what she's doing. Her face looks less like a ham pose and more like she has a stomachache. Just then, Sasaki's friends arrive, and noticing them, Nobukuni panics and quickly tries to slip away. Retreat level, expert. They start chatting with Sasaki while she rushes off, pretending she's going to get food. As Sasaki's friends watch her leave, one of them remarks that Nobukuni might be in love with him. Hearing that, Sasaki just stares after her in disbelief. He asks his friend if they really think so, and another boy nearby joins in, saying he's been observing them from the back table for quite a while. Then another friend chimes in, claiming he once saw Nobukuni trying to show her sides to Sasaki, the scientific method of teenage romance, wild guesses. The conversation drifts toward whether Sasaki even likes Nobukuni or not. He says it's not like that, but one of his friends insists he should at least give it a chance. Sasaki admits Nobukuni can be a little dull, yet his friends point out that if he actually pays attention, she's pretty cute. Meanwhile, Nobukuni is fully focused on her food when Iyama-chan casually mentions that her shirt is covered in crumbs, making it look messy. Flustered, she jumps up, steps back a little, and sprinkles water from her bottle to clean it off. Crisis management, chaotic but effective, but as the water soaks through, her figure becomes more visible, leaving the whole class stunned. Everyone watches in shock, finding the sight unexpectedly striking. Then one boy nudges another, reminding him not to stare. He already has a girlfriend. The second boy starts praising his girlfriend, saying they're both really great, but before he can finish, she walks up behind him, smacks him on the head with a book, and storms away. Instant karma never misses. Back at Sasaki's desk, his friends continue chatting. One of them asks why he doesn't just take Nobukuni out sometime. Sasaki shrugs and says he doesn't really find her cute or anything like that. Translation: he totally does. The friend who was about to defend her instantly drops the topic. Still, they press him on when he plans to take Nobukuni on a date. After thinking for a moment, Sasaki admits he feels like Nobukuni might be in love with him, but he's not sure whether he should actually go out with her. His friends insist they're certain no one would show you their side like that for no reason, but Sasaki argues that not everyone who does that necessarily likes someone. Hearing this, the boys stare at him blankly, completely lost on what he means. On the other side of the room, after chatting with her friends, Nobukuni returns to her seat as soon as the bell rings. The class settles down, and she once again starts making that same face, the same strange expression, one Sasaki still can't interpret at all. He's solving it like a math problem with missing numbers. He has no idea why she's doing it, or what she's trying to express. Just then, a blush creeps onto Nobukuni's face, and she quickly tells Sasaki not to stare at her so much. It's embarrassing. Sasaki, however, is utterly confused, thinking he didn't even do anything. Yet from the looks of it, the entire class seems to share the same thought, that the two of them should date already. High school rumors work faster than Wi-Fi. Later in class, Nobukuni calls Sasaki over and mentions that he seems to have trouble seeing the board, offering that he can copy her notes. Sasaki thanks her and compliments her, but she waves it off, saying it's nothing. Her heart throws a party already. Deep down, she thinks to herself that Sasaki still doesn't know. Her mind drifts back to the previous night, when she'd nervously decided to try on something unusual, romantic undergarments. Even now, sitting in class, that thought lingers. Sasaki has no idea that beneath her uniform today, she's wearing something surprisingly intimate. Following another piece of advice from her so-called love guru to wear lucky underwear for confidence, Nobukuni had ordered a pair online since she didn't own any. But now, in the middle of class, it's making her incredibly uneasy. She shifts uncomfortably in her seat, struggling to stay composed. Confidence clearly comes with side effects. Her hands twitch, and she keeps glancing down at her uniform, fidgeting as worry flickers across her face. Sasaki quietly notices her restlessness, though he doesn't understand why. Nobukuni's heart pounds as if she's moments away from being exposed. Everything feels strange for her today. Her expressions change erratically, and even when she's standing in the corridor, a blank, uneasy look stays on her face. It's all because of what she's wearing, and the thought alone makes her tense. Fashion advice forgot this part completely. A flicker of guilt creeps in, like she's done something daring, something she shouldn't have. Then, an announcement echoes through the classroom. PE class is about to begin. The girls stay inside to change, chatting casually. Suddenly, Eri freezes mid-sentence, her eyes widening as she catches sight of Nobukuni. For a split second, Eri realizes what Nobukuni is wearing underneath, and shock flashes across her face. Startled, our girl quickly hides herself, while Eri blinks, unsure whether she really saw what she thought she did. During the PE exercises, Nobukuni tries to carry on, but the outfit makes every movement feel impossible. So much for easy to move. Halfway through the drills, she suddenly freezes, panic flooding her face as her clothes bounce too much. A few boys pass by, and her embarrassment peaks. She bolts away, hiding in a corner, trembling and red-faced, silently vowing never to let anyone see her like this again. Regret takes over. She realizes she made a huge mistake buying something like that. As she tries to calm herself, Sasaki appears behind her, softly calling her name and asking if she's all right. Nobukuni quickly replies that she's fine, though her voice wavers. Nothing says fine, like full panic. When Sasaki steps closer to check on her, she hides her face, turning away in fluster, muttering for him not to look at her like that. Sasaki quickly apologizes, explaining he only looked because she seemed unusually romantic today and he couldn't help but notice. Nobukuni's face turns crimson as she freezes in embarrassment, then slowly straightens with a shy smile, softly repeating his words, asking if she really looks romantic. Warmth spreads through her chest, his compliment giving her a sudden boost of confidence. Feeling lighter, she heads up the stairs, then turns back with a playful glint in her eyes, calling his name and telling him she'll see him again. Her clothes sway as she moves, leaving him momentarily speechless. In that moment, Nobukuni finally understands what her love guru's advice truly meant. After school, Eri walks up to Nodoka in class and teasingly calls her a big ass and chubby kid. Eri's sense of timing is truly unmatched. Nobukuni, clearly irritated, doesn't respond, while Eri keeps calling out to her, amused by her own teasing. Suddenly, Nobukuni bursts out, telling Eri to stop saying such embarrassing things. She pleads with her not to call her by those names in front of Sasaki. Eri quickly apologizes, and in her mind, she recalls that she and Nodoka have been friends since elementary school, remembering the very first day they met. Nodoka is only 6 years old when she first meets Eri during a school trip. Eri is the one who approaches her first, striking up a friendly chat that quickly turns into a bond between them. As they sit together on the bus, they share stories about their daily lives, and before long, Nobukuni asks if they can go home together. That's how all great friendships start, on buses. Eri happily agrees, and a bright sparkle lights up in Nobukuni's eyes. Now Eri thinks back to how, in the beginning, Nobukuni was always scared to go home alone, so they used to walk together every day. But as time passed, they started spending less time with each other, and their group eventually split apart. Still, whenever neither of them has plans after school, they often end up walking home together again. But today, on their way home, Nobukuni mentions that she won't be able to walk with Eri tomorrow. Truly a betrayal on foot level. Before Nobukuni can even explain why, Eri casually says she already understands and quickly changes the subject, pointing out a nearby store that sells nail products. Soon, the two of them get caught up chatting about the store instead. Then, in the middle of their chatter, Eri starts teasing Nobukuni and playfully wonders why she'll be staying late tomorrow, since her weekly duty should finish on time. She explains that she promised Sasaki she'd walk home with him afterward. Hearing that, Eri realizes this was exactly what she had suspected all along. So Eri suggests going somewhere else, since walking home together doesn't seem necessary. Nobukuni clarifies that she wants to walk with him simply to spend time as friends on the way back. Just friends. The biggest myth ever told. Eri then remarks that it sounds like Sasaki might be taking her place instead. Hearing that, Nobukuni panics, quickly insisting that she never meant it that way. Eri laughs, biting her tongue playfully, clearly enjoying the teasing. The two chat for a while, and Eri remarks that she can see how much this chubby kid has changed. Nobukuni immediately protests, telling her not to call her that name. Then, Eri looks at Nobukuni and starts laughing, realizing that she has never once asked her to go anywhere outside of school. Introverts everywhere just nodded in solidarity. They begin talking about Nobukuni's articles, and she explains that she has spent most of her time at home, which is why she developed the habit of reading books and love columns. She adds that now she does all this so she can appear like a normal high school girl. Deep down, she thinks that if she wants to be friends with Sasaki, she'll have to change herself. Eri turns her face away, thinking that these kinds of things happen because the environment changes. Then, glancing back at Nobukuni, she tells her to follow whatever her love guru advises. Nobukuni replies that this particular thing isn't written in the column, because if she truly follows it, it would mean they're real friends. Hearing this, a blush spreads across Eri's face, and Nobukuni feels equally embarrassed. Emotional damage. Mutually delivered. Eri hides her face by turning away, while Nobukuni smiles at her. The two continue chatting as they walk home together. After class ends and everyone is heading home, Nobukuni shyly approaches Sasaki and asks if they should go together. Bold move for someone blushing already. In her mind, she thinks about how today is the first day they decided to walk home, side by side. As they leave the school, Sasaki leads her toward the other side of town, and Nobukuni is caught off guard by it. When he inquires about her reaction, she quickly says it's nothing, though deep down, she knows her house is in the opposite direction. Commitment level, walking the wrong way home. She had lied to Sasaki just so she could spend more time with him, hoping she would find a good chance later to slip away. They start walking toward a hilly part of town, and soon, Nobukuni feels a rush of quiet happiness. Suddenly, she reminds herself not to get too carried away, since she still needs to find her way home. As she begins speaking to Sasaki, he calls her name, and she responds instantly. He asks where her house is, and Nobukuni freezes for a moment, realizing that it's actually quite far. She'll have to walk back the same way later, but for now, she doesn't want the moment to end, so she asks where he's heading instead. When he gestures in a direction, she subtly mimics it with her hands, leaving him surprised that she seems to be going the same way too. Smooth lies require smooth hand gestures. Then, with a soft laugh and a light smile, Nobukuni tells him she thinks they can stay together a little longer. Inside, she's thrilled, her heart fluttering at the thought of getting extra time with him. The two of them begin strolling aimlessly, content just to share the walk. As they move along the town side, Sasaki mentions that when he was in Tokyo, he often imagined having someone to walk with through a place as calm and beautiful as this. He adds that Nobukuni must be used to scenery like this by now. Meanwhile, she admits to herself that she has absolutely no idea where they are. Classic, lost, but emotionally invested. She stops for a moment, glancing around and trying to get her bearings. It's unfamiliar, yet oddly peaceful. Sasaki keeps chatting about the area, while Nobukuni stands quietly, wondering how she'll get home from here. During the conversation, her face turns a deep shade of pink, and Sasaki remarks that he's excited. She calls out to him, thinking fondly of her friends, but deep down, she's just happy to be becoming part of Sasaki's everyday life. Somewhere, Eri is rolling her eyes. Turning slightly away, she gives a small smile and tells him she should go now, promising that she'll see him again tomorrow. Sasaki smiles back as they part ways. Nobukuni steps back and hides nearby, waiting for him to leave before continuing on her own. After he disappears from sight, she sits down for a moment, thinking that once she waits a little longer, she'll catch the train or bus home. Sitting there alone, she feels a touch of melancholy, until she suddenly bumps into Sasaki again. Fate clearly refuses to mind its business. Startled, she stares at him, equally surprised that he's still around. Sasaki looks just as taken aback to see her lingering here instead of heading home. He asks what she's doing, and amid their flustered exchange, they both laugh and agree to walk together once more. Smiling, they resume their quiet stroll. Nobukuni enters the classroom and before sitting at her desk, greets Sasaki that she's arrived. He welcomes her back with a warm smile. The guy smiles like he's in a toothpaste ad. Nobukuni sits down, gives a shy grin, and blushing, reaches for her bag. She pulls out her Love Gurus column and flips through the pages carefully, reading with deep focus while Sasaki quietly observes, instantly realizing what she's up to. He's witnessing live research in romantic chaos. In today's column, the advice says to look into the eyes of the person you like for 7 seconds. She studies the details attentively, noting that anyone who meets your gaze for 7 seconds will sense your feelings for them. He softly calls out to her from behind. She turns toward him and instantly feels nervous, slowly lowering her gaze. Her face flushes deeply as she reminds herself she should maintain at least 7 seconds of eye contact. 7 seconds has never felt so dangerous. When she looks back at Sasaki, she starts sweating again, overwhelmed by the intensity of the moment. Slowly, she lifts her gaze and begins counting the seconds. Meanwhile, Sasaki thinks to himself how cool she looks and calls out to her again, but she doesn't react, too focused on counting. The 7 seconds feel endlessly long to her, and when they finally pass, Sasaki suddenly senses something odd too and turns his face away. Nobukuni wonders why he turned away when they were already so close. The thought makes her even more uneasy. Romance meets confusion, her worst combo yet. But Sasaki's reason seems to be something else entirely. When she calls him again, he looks at her but, glancing toward her, quickly averts his face once more. Nobukuni questions why he's hiding his face, and Sasaki mutters that it's nothing. Seeing this, Nobukuni feels a wave of frustration, realizing how difficult it is to create a natural moment with him. She calls him over again, explaining that she applied eyeshadow during class and wants him to see how it looks. Nothing says subtle like announcing your makeup. As Sasaki turns to glance, his eyes accidentally drift toward her chest, and he instantly tenses up. He stammers that it looks good, while Nobukuni realizes he still can't seem to look directly at her. Determined, she decides to show him a picture of her cat, holding her phone in front of her. Slowly, she brings it closer to her face and smiles, thinking this might finally make him hold eye contact for 7 seconds. Bold strategy, weaponizing a cat photo. But when Sasaki looks at her again, his gaze slips back toward her chest. Nobukuni blinks in surprise, wondering why he still won't meet her eyes. Just then, Airi walks over and asks what she's up to, commenting on her eyeshadow and whether it worked. Then, noticing something odd, she points out that Nobukuni's shirt button near her chest is undone. Startled, she quickly fixes it and covers herself with both hands. Seeing this, Sasaki immediately turns away again, and Nobukuni finally understands what had really happened. Somewhere, the love guru just lost credibility. Her blush deepens until her face turns bright red like a tomato. That day, Sasaki doesn't find the courage to look at her again. Nobukuni thinks back to when she first met Sasaki. The teacher had introduced him in class as a new boy from Tokyo and seated him next to her. From that moment, she had fallen for him. Love at first desk assignment, apparently. She struggles to respond to Sasaki, manages a quiet comment that it's nice to sit beside him, then hides her face. That day, the first thing she does is buy some teen magazines. Growing up in the countryside, she had spent most of her time reading books and had no experience with romantic life. Books never prepared her for this level of panic. But she worked hard through those columns, paying close attention to every detail while also observing her friend Eri, how she did her makeup and carried herself. Whenever she interacted with Sasaki, she panicked completely and couldn't speak properly, her nerves getting the best of her. Even so, the reason she's been doing so well lately is because of Miko's columns. Reading them gives her ideas, and she's learned that when greeting someone, you should make eye contact, because nothing says confidence like calculated staring. Determined to follow that advice, she greets Sasaki the next day at school with a cheerful, "Good morning." The moment he looks at her, Nobukuni's heart starts racing uncontrollably, and she freezes. When Sasaki calls her name and returns the greeting, a deep blush spreads across her face, and she quickly hurries to her seat. She keeps getting through her days by reading those columns and makes a mental note to take as many of Miko's articles home as she can. Going through them like this makes her feel genuinely good, because every week she learns something new. Her love life runs on weekly subscriptions. In today's column, she reads that if the person in front of you has a big nose, maybe something else is big too. Nobukuni immediately panics at this, wondering what she's even supposed to do with such information. She starts sweating and decides Miko's advice might not always be that useful. The following day at school, all the students are settled in their seats, and Nobukuni feels intensely nervous as she sits down. Sasaki greets her with a good morning and asks if she's okay. Flustered and sweaty, she insists nothing happened and turns her face away, murmuring, "Good morning," under her breath, making sure not to meet his eyes. She's one greeting away from a full meltdown. The memory of the eye contact advice flashes through her mind again, and Nobukuni cautiously looks toward Sasaki. Her gaze lands on his nose, and, mortified, she quickly hides her face, unable to look any longer. Just then, one of Sasaki's friends calls him over. Nobukuni tries to speak to Sasaki but feels too anxious to even form a greeting. When she calls his name, he turns toward her instantly, but again, her eyes go straight to his nose. Her brain's autopilot has terrible aim. The longer Sasaki talks, the redder her face grows. She becomes so embarrassed that she can't manage any real conversation with him that day. At home, Nobukuni feels deeply frustrated. She complains to her love guru that the advice is useless, yet in her heart, she keeps thinking about it. Still, she can't deny that most of the time, the guru's words do help. Nobukuni seats Emma beside her for her next love experiment. Placing a hand on her thighs and observing closely, she inquires how it feels, and Emma admits it feels soft, but quite erotic. In reality, Nobukuni wants this because today's advice she read suggested that an effective move is to touch the other person's thighs. She explains to Emma that she's doing this because she's following Miko's advice to get closer to Sasaki. But Emma doesn't react, which makes Nobukuni feel a little more uneasy. She then apologizes, but Emma assures her there's no need. Nobukuni explains that even though she's doing this for practice, she's adding it into everything, and mentions she'll need to find a way to make physical contact naturally. After that, Nobukuni flips through her magazine pages and mentions that Miko says back touches can be a little tricky but effective. She mimics the motion on Emma's back and decides to practice it discreetly so the boys won't notice. Emma turns her face away and sits, while Nobukuni gets ready to mimic the smack. Stealth mode, expert level, until someone notices. She calls out Sasaki's name from behind without looking at him and continues tapping Emma's back repeatedly. Finally, Emma turns to her and asks if she understands now. Nobukuni keeps smacking Emma's back, and she urges Nodoko to stop, saying she's back in her own body and can't take it anymore. Feeling a bit exasperated, Emma explains that standing out in class is difficult for girls like her. She advises Nobukuni to try from the front next time. As soon as Nobukuni hears front, she says she can follow a pattern where she'll clean the dirt on Sasaki's face. She starts testing it, moving her hand toward Emma's face as if to wipe something away, but Emma, acting as Sasaki, remarks that she can handle it herself and just needs to be told where the dirt is. Nobukuni continues the act, insisting Emma can manage her own face, and Emma takes the hint, moving away from her. Because who doesn't want a face-cleaning volunteer in math class? This sparks a small argument between them, and Nobukuni begins to tear up, thinking that if Sasaki acted this way, he'd seem really mean. Emma softens and calms her down. Emma then reminds her that she mentioned this before, that in boys' lives these NPC-like girls don't matter much, while Nobukuni wants to see herself as the main character. Emma proposes a final solution. Nobukuni should somehow lose her balance and touch Sasaki's arm. They both stand facing each other, ready to test it. As Nobukuni steps forward, Emma tries to stop her, saying she looks too intense and should wait a second. Nobukuni insists she's just acting in spirit, but Emma comments that she's putting too much strength into it. She adjusts her stance and slowly inches forward again, preparing to try. Just as she gets close, the door suddenly opens, startling her. Nobukuni loses her balance and ends up touching Sasaki directly. Nailed the accidental hero move perfectly. She panics slightly as he checks if she's okay. She gently steadies her in place, thinking to herself that things went almost exactly as she'd planned. But noticing Sasaki's friend nearby, she tries to quietly slip away. As the friend glances toward Emma, she blushes intensely and quickly spins around, walking off, while her friend begins realizing what just happened. Nobukuni is bent over at the washroom sink with Emma, washing her hands, when suddenly Airi spots her from behind. A mischievous thought crosses Airi's mind, and she approaches Nobukuni, giving her back a firm slap. Nobukuni jolts in surprise, while Airi remarks that her position was perfect for that move. Backhands are apparently educational. The comment sparks a heated exchange between the two. After that, Airi begins teasing Nobukuni, while Emma excuses herself to the washroom and quickly leaves. She's actually intimidated by Airi's bold, extroverted energy, being an introvert herself. Meanwhile, Airi turns back to Nobukuni and inquires what she's up to. She admits she's thinking about what type of animal Sasaki would be. Because today she wants to answer Miko's question about which animal personality everyone has, Nobukuni and Airi start debating. When Nobukuni tells Airi that her own type is like a raccoon, she decides she now needs to figure out Sasaki's animal type. High school, where animal comparisons get serious. But according to Airi, Nobukuni will only get the answer if Sasaki reveals it himself. Still, Airi warns her that such questions can get complicated. Nobukuni says she'll start with an easy one, asking Sasaki about his writing style. Airi mentions they already know he's right-handed, then moves on and prompts Nobukuni for the next question. It could be a two-glass question, whether Sasaki wears a cardigan or not. The gal already knows the answer, but Airi grows irritated by these sorts of questions. She feels Nobukuni is just messing with her and gets visibly annoyed. Airi finds the whole thing odd because Nobukuni's questions seem strangely simple and random. Then her attention catches one that actually sounds interesting. If you were riding a dragon, would you prefer a strong, steady one or a fast one? Airi remarks that this is the kind of question only Sasaki himself could answer. There's no guessing here. Dragons clearly complicate dating. Nobukuni disagrees, but Airi insists she should just go ask him directly. As they approach, they overhear Sasaki chatting with his friends, saying that if he were riding a dragon, he'd prefer a fast one. Hearing that, both girls freeze, stunned that Sasaki answered the very question they were debating. Nobukuni lets out a faint sigh of relief. As she quickly flips through her magazine, Airi questions what's going on and why she's suddenly in such a rush. Nobukuni explains that according to the column, if Sasaki says yes to that answer, he falls under the fox-type category, and that means his romance level with her raccoon-type personality would be quite low. Thinking it through, she looks disappointed. Airi asks about the next question, and Nobukuni explains it's whether Sasaki prefers coffee or tea after a meal. She quietly hopes he doesn't like tea, but right then, Sasaki, still talking with his friends, says he actually does like tea. Tea drama is very real. Hearing that, Nobukuni deflates, and Airi lets out a long sigh. Frustrated, she suddenly storms over to Sasaki in the classroom, snatching the tea from his hand mid-sip. She thrusts a cup of coffee at him and declares that he should drink this instead, then strides off. Turning back to Nobukuni, she remarks that now she should be satisfied. Everything went just as she wished, but she only stares in disbelief, realizing the next question is a tricky one, and if it goes the same way, Sasaki would once again fall into the fox-type category. Then comes the next question. If a butt were in front of Sasaki, would he hit it? The question feels absurdly direct, almost impossible to ask. Airi reassures Nobukuni that Sasaki would never answer yes, which gives her a little courage. She brings Nobukuni over to Sasaki, magazine in hand, making it obvious what she's doing. She poses the same question to Sasaki, and as expected, he answers no. Yes, polite refusals are important life skills. At that, her joy knows no bounds. Today, Nobukuni seems to be planning something new just by the way she's getting ready. When she walks into class, her whole dressing style mirrors Aries, and she's clearly trying to act like a gyaru, hoping this might bring her closer to Sasaki. High school, where wardrobe choices equal strategy. With a confident new pose, she greets him with a cheerful, "Good morning," but Sasaki doesn't give much of a reaction, so she forces a bored expression and heads toward her seat. Instead of sitting down normally, she perches herself on the table, striking a pose she believes looks effortlessly attractive. Just then, Sasaki's friend walks in. Nobukuni notices him and quickly hides her face. The friend leans toward Sasaki, whispering that something seems off with Nobukuni today, and wonders if she even realizes her pants are getting caught. Modern problems require dramatic hiding. Hearing this, Nobukuni freezes in embarrassment. Before Sasaki can say anything, Nobukuni cuts him off with a casual, "No biggie." Both of them stare at her in surprise. She continues, insisting she doesn't care, even if everyone notices, because she thinks it's fine, just like the class's bold queen, Eri, would. Deep down, though, Nobukuni is mortified. Sasaki can tell that if she were being her usual self, she'd be frantically trying to fix her clothes. Choosing not to make things worse, he decides to look away, and the two quietly go back to their own conversations. Meanwhile, Sasaki's friend mutters that Nobukuni seems to be protesting in her own, silent way. Silent protests are surprisingly loud. His friend then nudges Sasaki to try talking to Nobukuni and see if he can figure out what's going on. Nobukuni, meanwhile, has a new piece of advice from her love guru tucked in her mind, and right then, Ima walks in. Overhearing bits of their exchange, Ima blushes furiously. In the middle of all this, Sasaki starts sharing that there are 11 types of girls he doesn't like at all, and mentions a childhood crush from elementary school. Nobukuni subtly adjusts her uniform, realizing that Sasaki isn't into gyaru-type girls after all. Some crushes come with fine print. As the conversation continues, Sasaki reminisces about playing in the mountains with a girl back when he was in 1st or 2nd grade. His friend looks surprised and remarks that there are mountains in Tokyo. Sasaki chuckles and explains that his grandparents live in this city, so he often visited and met her there. Sasaki's friend glances toward Nobukuni and asks whether that girl liked insects. Sasaki nods, puzzled about how he knew. When he looks up, he notices Nobukuni covered in insect-themed accessories, from her hairpins to her necklace, every detail crawling with tiny bugs. Fashion or subtle intimidation? His friend points out how Nobukuni seems a little different today too, but Sasaki brushes it off, recalling how terrified she once got at the sight of a spider. Nobukuni catches that and playfully acts scared, trying to cover her tracks. Sasaki laughs softly and tells his friend that back then, the girl had actually climbed the hills just to catch a beetle for him, and even scraped her knees doing it. He adds that he doesn't think she genuinely liked insects though. Childhood crushes, Extreme Sports Edition. Hearing this, Nobukuni quietly unclamps the spider buckle from her shirt and tosses it aside. Amidst their chatter, Sasaki mentions that Nobukuni reminds him of that same childhood girl, and as he glances at her, he catches a flicker of recognition, something nostalgic reflected in her eyes. At that moment, his friend realizes it. Soon, the whole class starts to understand. The girl from Sasaki's memories had been Nobukuni all along, yet Sasaki himself hasn't quite put the pieces together just yet, because plot twists are best served in uniforms.